Up, everybody? Welcome to the Wait, What Are We Talking About podcast, episode 161. My name is Bret, aka Enigma 9011, and today I'm joined once again by Corey, aka Corey Cudney. Corey, how's it going, man?
I'm doing good. How are you, man?
I'm great. I'm very excited for our conversation today. Remember, guys, if you want to catch this podcast live, you go over to twitch.tv/Enigma9011, usually every Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern. You join the chat, join on the conversation and the fun over there. But if you can't catch live, that's A-OK. Go over to YouTube and podcast services the very next week, where it's broken out topic by topic and put as one big video and MP3 for your amusement on the following Friday. Last but not least, any way you can support, whether it's leaving a like, a review, sharing the podcast with somebody you think who would enjoy it, whatever it is. It may seem small, but it does help the show grow and helps us out in a big way, and I'd love you for it. So please, if you can, do that. But yeah, Corey's back today, and guess what we're talking about, chat? We alluded to it last time. We're talking wrestling.
Yes. I love it. I can talk forever about wrestling.
As you can see, Corey is planned. Well, maybe he didn't plan. If he didn't plan, that's just convenient. He has worn the appropriate attire today. Corey attended the last Royal Rumble 2023, and we're going to talk about that to start. So yeah, let's just, I guess, general blanket statement question. Corey, how was the Rumble in person?
It was really good. It was awesome. I went in 2017, was also in San Antonio at the Alamo Dome. Mm-hmm. So it was a really good, my brother got tickets in 2017, and he was like, I'm going to warn you, like, they're not great tickets. And I was like, okay. And so we saw like NXT the night before in 2017. Ooh. It was the one where I think it was the one where Bobby Roode beat Shinsuke for the title.
Okay, yeah.
It was pretty good. I really enjoyed that one. And then when we got to the Alamo Dome in 2017, we just kept going up the stairs, and it was like comical. We just kept going up. We were in the very tippy top where there was legitimately probably like 5 or 6 rows behind us, and we were at the top.
Sure.
And the lady was kind of abrasive. I'll never forget it, where we get to the final like landing. And like, this is a group of wrestling fans. Everybody paid money to be in here probably, unless they like papered the event and gave out free tickets. I don't know. That's hearsay. Who knows? And so like we get to that landing, and she's like, "You're gonna need binoculars. You're not gonna see a thing." And I was like, oh my God. Like, she was very like upfront about it. And like, she was like antagonistic. And I was like, screw you, lady. I'm gonna watch it. And we watched the screen most of the time, but it was great. And so I told Colby, my brother, like, I don't know, this was probably like whenever they put the tickets first on sale, I was like, I'm gonna get tickets. And they're going to be better than last time. And so I went through this thing. It's on the side. It's called Priority Pass. And I think that they went through this company one other time. The company's called On Location. And I think they went through them for Survivor Series first. And I think this is their second time going through it. And they're doing it again for Mania. And it's kind of like, so they don't have to plan out all the like, hey, you spend this amount of money and you get like this experience. You get to go take a picture at the ring and do this, blah, blah, blah. We got not the cheapest of that, but the one right below. So you really don't get anything. Like, you don't get to go to the ring. You don't like meet people or whatever, because those are a little too pricey. But they're like, you do get, a guaranteed pretty good seat, and you get a hat, and you get like a lanyard. I should have brought the lanyard. You get like a lanyard, and even though it doesn't do anything, like, you still feel nice, sure, walking in with your lanyard. And then 3 weeks down the line, so I don't have it yet because it was just last week, but they said approximately 3 weeks to a month later, you'll get one of those plaques that has like a used ring mat cut off of it. So that'll be cool. And so we had like this whole section, and I felt this is such a bad story for me to start on. I felt really ungrateful, and I had to like humble myself, because I am used to like these AEW shows, and I'm used to smaller scale shows than the Royal Rumble, where even the mid-sized tickets, you're pretty close, and you're like, cool. We sit down, and I told my brother immediately, I'm like, I am so sorry. I was like, these are not great tickets. I'm sorry, man. And he was like, no, these are great. Don't worry about it. And like, we were right next to the press box, if that kind of helps give you a mental image, where the press box is meant for the journalists and stuff to be able to see everything and, get a clear picture. So we were able to see everything really well. We were right behind, not any of the camera sides, but we were facing right down the ramp. so we could see people coming pretty much towards us. And so I was in the middle of saying that, and like to a comical degree, people would come down and sit, and they'd be like, "These seats are amazing." And so I was like, "Okay, Corey, quit being picky. Like, enjoy, because this is pretty cool." And so yeah, no, it was a great time. The pacing was a little weird. I don't know if it was just me and my brother were like talking to each other, because it started with the Rumble. Like all the middle matches kind of felt like a blur. But like the Rumble itself was really awesome. Like, you know, I think everybody saw from a mile away that Cody was going to win, but like you know, it's not the destination, it's how you got there. And we were really glad with that. A lot of that worked out really well. And like just moments like having Walter last the distance, and you have number 1 and number 30 facing off. Like, it was so good. I loved it. And that did such a good thing with Walter, I guess Gunther. It does such a good rub for Gunther and the Intercontinental Championship kind of by association. But like the Pitch Black match was also cool in its own right. It wasn't a great match, and it was one of those that you're watching in live view and you're like, I don't know how this is gonna work, but we'll see. And then like 5 minutes later, the bell rings, and we're like, oof, that was fast. But I don't know if they showed this on camera or not, because there was like the black lights.
Sure.
And everything worked. And then on the side of the arena, I can't imagine that they showed this on TV, because there's no way it would have played well on camera. On the side of the arena, they had one of those, I can describe it best as a Guitar Center light show. Okay. But it was so cool because they were like like pink and green lasers were like zoom, zoom, and like going in between each other. And the whole crowd popped for it. And it happened one time and not again. And we were like, me and my brother were like, why aren't you keeping that up? Like, that looks so cool. And so like we were just as confused as apparently everybody watching online with what happened with Uncle Howdy and everything like that, where me and my brother were like, did he jump? Was he pushed? And like, oh, we're gonna have to watch back. And it turns out you don't know any of that watching either. Like, because to me, watching it felt like the TV friends like pushed Uncle Howdy, but apparently he just jumped, I guess. I don't know. I still don't really know about
that's
that.
How I interpret it, at least when we were watching that night, that he jumped and unfortunately whiffed his elbow, and then the friends were just like looking at the chaos. But interesting.
Yeah, that was my personal theory, and then like it was never paid off. So that was my fan booking on it. It is very funny on a wrestling, Chris Jericho hopping off the steel cage onto a mattress type way, where it's like watching it, you're like, oh man, he did not hit near him, and you're like, they probably looked good on camera, and then people are just trashing it online. And I'm like, poor dude. Like, it's one of those things where in the year 2023, we know the tricks and stuff. We don't want them to get hurt,
right?
And so I don't want you to jump off a 30-foot thing or whatever and land directly on the guy. So I don't know what else I was asking, but like you said, maybe a little close. Like, he whiffed it a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then by the time the women's championship match came up, the crowd was still kind of dead. And that one, I felt bad for them, because they didn't seem to get the time, and that always seems to happen with the women's matches in particular. Right. They just didn't seem to get it. Again, it was like you blink and we're like, hey, we're getting into the third gear of the match. Like, the crowd's starting to kind of come back, and then the bell rings, and you're like, oh. And then the women's battle, the women's Royal Rumble was like the same way at the beginning. I don't know if this felt this way on. I'll get your take.
Okay.
Because in the arena, it felt like the first like half up until Asuka is where me and my brother kind of determined. Up until Asuka, the crowd was still kind of dead. And then from Asuka to the end, it was like a crescendo of like, heck yeah, like Asuka got a big pop, and then that energy is just kind of carried off through the rest of the night.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I would think that was the same. Yeah, like you mentioned, the kind of pacing, I think from our perspective, it was a little bit of the opposite. Like, I don't know if we just felt that energy, like, yeah, the Rumble's exciting, and then it's kind of like, there was everything, and then it go, we're back into it. But yeah, that I can definitely agree. Asuka's like, when she came out, and especially with the reveal of the the more Kana gimmick, it was like, whoa, everybody is back into it. So
I was so impressed with like because I personally didn't know about Kana. Like Colby had to like tell me, oh, there's like the murder clown, there's like this whole thing, and I was like, oh, heck yeah. Because I'm a very stereotypical like WWE person pre like I don't know pre 2014 or so, where I don't know if I have the exact time, but it's like that's probably a good, because that's really when I started getting into NXT.
Yep.
And then NXT kind of spins off into the other indies and then everything like that. My brother was always really good about keeping up with New Japan and stuff like that. He showed me Okada and Omega, like all of their stuff, and he was showing me Being the Elite way before I ever knew like anything about it, and it was really crazy. And so yeah, he was telling me about it, and then she takes off the mask and it's Kana, and everybody just like pop. I'm like, oh my god, this crowd is, you guys, good on you guys. Like, you guys know. And so that was the other thing I was a little sad about, but it's totally, I totally understand it, just because of the difference in the crowds. Like, you go to an AEW show and people are up and, debatably, depending on where you are in the arena, almost to an obnoxious level, where people are like up and screaming and yelling and waving signs around and like they're part of the show. Especially at a show this big, really only like the first section of the on the ground guys, fans are like in the show. It feels like the rest of us are just like observers, like, oh yes,
yeah.
And like, my section got up and popped for like, Cody and Booker T, like everybody popped for, and I will never, I'm one of those people, I will never fail to be amazed at how over Roman is now. And it's just like, I don't know him personally, obviously, but I'm like, you know what? I'm glad for this man. Like, he was back in 2017, he was hated. Like, he came out in number 30, and legitimately, me and my brother started to get up to start going, and we did the slow walking down so we could like still see what was happening. And then Randy Orton won, and we were like, okay, that's better than Roman, I guess. And we left early. And it's like, here, it's like the Roman match was put on last very specifically, and not a soul got up. Almost like I'm sure the cameras caught it really well, but it is very weird to be in a room where 90% of the people are holding up their ones. And it's just like, am I in a cult? Like, this is bananas. It's crazy. And it's like so much more eerie than like the yes chant or anything like that too, because everybody just stands up silently and puts it up. And it's just, you're like, oh my God, this is crazy. And so that was one of those things where we were like, okay, we parked, like half a mile away. We're not going to get out of the traffic or whatever, so we might as well just stay.
Yeah. And
so we stayed for the whole thing. And I was kind of amazed at how many people stayed through the entire Sammy moment at the end. And like everybody's talked about, the pop was huge at the end of all that. And so, yeah, like the only thing, and I can't hold this against WWE whatsoever, I kind of can for the booking of it, but not really, which is putting him at the end. Me and my brother and a lot of people around us very loudly said so, kind of implies, oh, The Rock is going to come. Like, they're going to end on a Rock pop, and he's going to come and confront him.
Sure.
Not knowing what they were actually ending on was the Sammy pop, and like, oh, okay, this is actually going to be Sammy turning on him finally. But like, it was one of those things where you kind of get the implication with the way that it's booked. You're like, okay, if Sammy's not in the Rumble because it's not, they were kind of caught in a rock and a hard place. Because if you put the Rumble last, but the World Heavyweight Championship first, or even before, the implication is, oh, well, Sammy's going to be in the Rumble. So now you're putting Cody's win kind of at risk, where you have like a 2014 Daniel Bryan situation, or 2017, whichever year it was, where he didn't win and everybody wanted him to win. And so it's not an enviable position that they were put in. But overall, I really enjoyed the show. It went by very smoothly. I got a little, you kind of can see it. There's a little bitty longhorn. I have started to, my finger is right on him now. I've become one of those people that I go to an event like that, and they don't do it for everything, but the little WrestleMania bear is right next to him. And so I got the WrestleMania bear, and I was like, I wonder if they have a stuffed animal at the Rumble. And sure enough, they had like a little, like a UT Bevo style situation, which is weird because they weren't in Austin, but I'll let it slide, I guess. They gave it. And so I was really upset. There was a Shawn Michaels t-shirt that was like event exclusive, and they sold out of my size so fast. I was like, dang, I wonder they just didn't order enough of these. I don't know.
Sure.
So, but yeah, no, it was really good. The Alamo Dome isn't the best venue ever for a lot of reasons, but it's a solid venue. I really enjoy it, and the show as a whole, like. My only piece of feedback is I feel like they need to play some music. Again, I hate to compare everything to AEW. You go to an AEW show and it's like they're playing music. You got the dark matches. They're bantering with the crowd back and forth, and it's just like a fun, lively environment. We walked in about an hour and a half early. It was dead silent. And it was just eerily silent. And they had the Royal Rumble logo up on the screen, but nothing else. And the ticker around the arena was even the arena ticker. It wasn't the Royal Rumble ticker yet. And they didn't play a single ad. They didn't introduce anybody. They didn't play any music. They didn't do anything until the lights hit off and the copyright logo hit, which got a huge pop.
Interesting.
Yeah, they did the lights every time they would cut to us in the arena. They had the lights to get people to do a pop. But like I was telling my brother, I was like, this is kind of weird. Like you slowly, as people started to file in, it started to get louder and louder as people talked amongst themselves. Sure. But I was like, dang, like just play like the theme song, maybe over and over even. Which I can't believe I didn't mention. My God, the crowd hated Hardy. It was so I felt simultaneously bad and I was cracking up because I was like, you guys should have. This feels very. I don't know if you've gone back and watched. Or if you lived through them, the early 2000s ones where they would cut to WWF Times Square and they would have them play like Drowning Pool or Saliva would play. It was always one of those two bands for some reason. And like they would play the theme song. And so it was like, it reminded me so much of that when they set up the drum kit and we were like, well, Roman doesn't have like a song that they could play. And, and Sammy doesn't, and Kevin, like, what are they going to do? Just like, and I finally was like, are they going to play the theme song? And sure enough, they did. And the crowd booed hardcore. I was like, oh man, it was kind of awkward.
Yeah.
It was a great moment to be in.
Yeah, it was definitely one of those things that kind of, like you talked about, momentum was just another like bump in the road. Like it was fine to do, but like they should have had something set up. And granted, they didn't have a stage, which I'll kind of talk about later with you. But like just, we got to set up this thing. Oh, now we got to take it all down. Like, let it keep going.
Also, it was so, I'm glad you just said that. So my brother and I had a theory, and I don't know if it's true or not. I haven't seen anybody talk about this actually, is in the arena, and I'm sure it happened at home. I don't know. They kept playing vignettes of the wrestlers that were in the Royal Rumble.
Yeah.
After the Royal Rumble.
Yeah.
And my brother and I were like, okay, they definitely changed the order of these at the last minute, right? Like you had to have, because it makes no. The first one we were like, well, that's kind of weird, and then the second one plays, and I can't remember who the second one was or whatever, and then the Braun Strowman one plays, and then you're like, and then there's the one with the Judgment Day explaining the entire thing with Edge, and me and my brother were like, oh, the men's Rumble was definitely going to go on last at some point because this is explaining every angle you need to know going into Rumble, which is genius if it plays before the Rumble. And like I saw Michael Cole on Pat McAfee's show was saying it was the most viewed Royal Rumble ever. And I'm like, that's brilliant if it's like, hey, we have a bunch of new eyes on the product for a myriad of reasons. The Roman Sammy thing is huge, and even like Logan Paul bringing people in, whatever. And it's like you have all these people new to wrestling and new to the product. And I just love the image of people like doing the Royal Rumble and like, I don't know who any of these people are. And then slowly over the next 3 hours, like, so that's what that was. That's why that guy hated that other guy.
Yeah, it was such an odd choice. Like, totally, yeah, do that. And you have vignettes for people because we've had that over the past couple pay-per-views since Triple H has been in charge, where we see like, oh, there's a Charlotte Flair one. She's obviously out. Let's promote her and stuff. I didn't know that. Yeah, they've had ones where they do that, but yeah, this one, I agree, totally felt like out of place. Like Papa Griff even just brought it up in chat as you were bringing it up. Like the between times, Yeah, you're talking about, I'm Braun Strowman, I'm a monster, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Bro, we just saw you lose. What are you talking about? Use this time to promote people who aren't here, who's injured. Maybe like the old days, there's this new person coming in. There's so much better time we could use here. Yeah, very
I
odd.
completely forgot about, I'm going to have to bring that up to my brother tonight, because I completely forgot about that entirely. We were like, I wonder if this is what they're seeing at home. Like, this is so weird. And that's what... I felt really bad for the ring crew. Probably not bad. I bet they were super proud of it. But those men and women at the ring crew went from a regular ring, and then they very quickly transitioned to the pitch black match, which was amazing because they didn't show this, but the ropes were literally just new electrical tape wrapped on the ropes. So in between that match, you would see somebody peel off, like they'd get it started, and then they just go, and the rope would just unravel. And it was such good, like that crew is phenomenal at how fast every single match, you had a brand new ring mat, and then it was just so fast. And then we were amazed because they started taking the ropes down. We're like, why are they taking the ropes down? We still got Sammy. And that's when Hardy came out. But it was like, I was like, oh my God, they went from a regular ring to a glow in the dark ring to a regular ring to no ring to a regular ring. And it's like, I was amazed with their efficiency and just how great they were on that one.
Yeah, they definitely put in the work that night. So you alluded to it earlier where you're sitting with the press box and stuff like that, or near the press box. You mentioned you could see everybody coming down the runway or the ramp. I bitched about this prior to the Rumble because over the holiday break, I rewatched the Rumble matches for like the past 6 years or whatever. I was like, whatever. And it got to, maybe it was the Texas one from like that you also alluded to. What is with the line of sight? What does WWE not understand? Entrance, ring, straight line. I don't want this fucking L.
No. I'll tell you why they did that. Okay, so this year, I don't know why they did that. In 2017, I'm sure you saw it. This may ring a bell in your head because it went semi-viral on my Twitter feed. In 2017, it was a super long thing, but I want to say it was straight on. I don't know. But it was super long, and all of the like heavyweights would get on a golf cart. And they would all like... Big E was hilarious because he was doing the royal wave with the thing. And like there were people like Mark Henry who was just like they're like, this isn't happening, and I'm going. And in the men's rumble this year, there was no golf cart, unfortunately. In the men's rumble, everybody took their sweet time. And me and my brother had a theory that the men's rumble went over by quite a bit because it felt like it went over quite a bit. But there were also just moments where like it felt like every male wrestler was just like taking their sweet time. Like they were soaking in the moment. And it's a long ass ramp. The women in their battle royal at the beginning, they would go, and then starting about, I don't know, entrant 10 maybe, it was hilarious because you could see if you know what you're looking for in the production world, it was hilarious because they would music hits or whatever. They come out, they hit their mark, and then camera's obviously off. They sprint full speed, and they go, and then the curve hits, and then they put on the brakes, and they turn, and then, the camera's back on them. They're back in character, and they're like, oh, look at me, or what, and they're just walking. But, like, I was wondering, watching it, it had to feel like you're going through a time warp because the man's here, and then, like, they show whatever from the ring, and then all of a sudden, they're all the way over here now. And it's so weird. The golf cart, like, makes sense, but I think it started such a weird thing because they've done that. Like they've had that weird runway for Royal Rumble specifically like a few years in a row, I'm pretty sure. And it's always weird.
It's been a few Rumbles, and then SummerSlam when they were in Clash of the Castle, they had it too. Yeah. And that was another thing that pissed me off because you had Bayley return, you had Io and Dakota re-signing or moving up, whatever you want to call it. And like, to me, okay, if I'm at the event and I don't remember the music because, let's face it, some of them are generic now. And I go, what? Like, I don't see anything. Like, I feel that kills the reaction.
The only thing I can think of, and this is like a pessimistic view, and I don't mean to sound like this. The only thing that I can think of is they feel like maybe they can cram more people in by volume if you have a super long, thin thing cut out. Because, you know, you can only sell so many rows stretching on the floor back on the floor. I guess unless you brought in risers, I don't know. That's the only thing I can think of logistically that would merit that. But yeah, the runway's weird, and you said it earlier, but like the lack of a stage is kind of a bummer. We're like slowly getting to where nobody, and now AEW got rid of the tunnels, which makes me sad. But it's like nobody's got like a stage thing anymore. And I saw a video. I've seen many videos touring the WWE archives, but one in particular came out relatively recently, and the guy giving the tour just casually mentioned, and I was like, I've never put that together. It makes so much sense. It was like one of the Armageddon signs or something like that. And he was like, yeah, this is back when we hand painted and had like big stage, like physical stage things. He goes, when we transitioned to HD, we completely cut that off because they really don't look good in high definition. And I kind of think they were playing with that at Clash of the Castle because they had the big video wall in the middle and it was kind of a stage with being the castle. Like, I think I'm okay with that if you put up giant video walls and those make up the stage, I guess. You just have a graphic designer make up a really high fidelity castle or whatever for the Rumble. But yeah, it's kind of weird, and it makes it gives a different feel, which is good, I guess. But for people like me, who we were pretty far back. I can't imagine people even farther back. The music hits, everybody's got like smoke or whatever, and then you're like, okay, I think they're down there somewhere. I don't know if they've come out yet. I'm just either going to watch, or maybe I'm back at the ring, or if you're holding your phone, you're like, I'm just going to keep my phone at there and like hope that they're still there. And then you'd see them turn the corner and you're like, okay, they're there now. So it makes it a little bit harder to watch as a live spectator, but also like we are in the super minority of the viewers. So you have to sacrifice the view of the few for the view of the many, I guess. So,
yeah, that's true.
It's a whole thing.
So you've alluded to the whole match card. You had the men's rumble, the women's rumble, the Mountain Dew Pitch Black Baja Blast, lights out thing, and then the women's championship and the men's. Did you have a personal highlight from the night?
I mean, honestly, it's a cliche, but I'd probably say the Royal Rumble. Like, Cody winning was really cool, and Rhea's win was actually really cool too. Like, the crowd popped huge for Rhea. I didn't really think that she was gonna win, and then like slowly as people started getting eliminated, it's like you do the thing as a fan where you're like, okay, well, they're obviously not gonna win. This person might win. This person probably won't win. They're not really in the picture. That would be really weird to slingshot them into this. And it's like, as the match goes on, you're like, okay, well, Rhea's like the only one who makes sense. And then it's her and Asuka and Liv. And you're like, okay, her and Asuka makes sense. Liv, I could see because she's been in and out of the title picture. And so having her and Liv be the last two, and then they do the fake out where you think, oh, God, Liv's going to do it by dumb luck, which is the worst way to have her win if she was going to win. And then it's like, oh, no, like Rhea turned it around. Like, this is really cool. And so, yeah, I would say the two Rumble winners. The Sammy thing was really cool. I felt like maybe if I was watching it at home, I would feel a little bit differently. Live in the stadium, we're like, hey, man, we've been here for 4.5 hours. This is dramatic and cool, but maybe we don't soak in the moment like this much. And I may be the only person on the planet that thinks like this, but I'm just like, okay, because I feel like they did one too many things. Because like, okay, they win, and then, okay, everybody beat up Kevin Owens now. And then everybody gets like a thing to do Kevin Owens. And then we're going to take another 2 minutes to handcuff Kevin Owens. And then now everybody do a thing to Kevin Owens again. And it's like, okay, maybe just like he's already knocked out from the match. Just handcuff him then, and then do your super kick party, which was really cool. I'm glad that they did that. But I think everything in between the pin and the handcuff, I don't know if that needed to happen because he was like hella worn out from the actual match. Especially with that nasty stair spot, which was so creative. It was so good. And really just have Kevin sell that, and it's 4-on-1 now. Have them drag him, even if he wants to fight. You have enough people. Then he handcuffs, and you can have Sammy do the, hey, I don't know if this is right. Then you could have cut like a good 10 minutes out of that. I get why they wanted to soak it in and really build it up, because like, theoretically, storytelling wise, the pressure cooker is building for Sammy's pop. So you know, maybe Sammy's pop wouldn't have been that big if it wasn't building for 20 minutes, but it was like a 20-minute main event, like after the main event, which is cool in and of itself. Very ballsy is such a funny way to put it, but ballsy way to end your pay-per-view, to have like this dramatic storytelling moment and no wrestling happen on a wrestling show. But like, it was really cool, but that probably wouldn't be my highlight. I'd say like the Royal Rumble winners. Okay. There wasn't my big complaint, and I do this with both Mania Night 2 that I went to and Rumble. There didn't seem to be any like big, oh man, this is such a well-crafted wrestling moment. It's all like in the spectacle of it. You have like the Logan Paul and Ricochet, you know, slamming in the middle, and like that's really cool and stuff. But like, there wasn't anything that me as a wrestling fan of like almost 20 years was like, oh man, I'm really impressed by this. But I guess that's kind of the trade-off that you're doing for the sports entertainment-ness of it. And when it's at that big of a scale, you know, are you just there to be like, hey, this is awesome, and I'm taking in the moment and everything? Or are you there to be like, nah, that's not a 5-star match.
So the Rumble stood out to you. So what did you feel about our surprise entrance this year? It felt like there was a limited amount of them. NXT only making an appearance in the Women's Rumble with 3 participants. I mean, they did great. Shout out to Roxanne, Zoe, and Indy. But yeah, what'd you feel about the entrants that showed up that weren't announced?
So this is my problem with like leaks in both the video game industry and the wrestling industry, which are so funny how similar they are in their leak culture, where it was leaked beforehand that like sources told, it was either Dave Meltzer or Sean Ross Sapp, I don't know, somebody that was like, oh, well, we're confident announcing Cody beforehand because we are very confident with the surprises that we have in store.
Yep.
And so that kind of builds a certain gravitas where you're like, oh, well, if they're going to announce Cody beforehand, they've got some heavy hitters. And the only like real surprise was Booker T in the Men's Rumble.
Yep.
And like, even that is a classic Royal Rumble moment where he gets in there, does his thing, spin a Rooney, gets thrown out. Classic Royal Rumble. It's great. But like, I do agree. Like, we were definitely light on the surprises, and that was a whole discussion. It's a very interesting discussion to be had of like, how much of the Royal Rumble is the Royal Rumble of surprises? Like, if you have a talent pool deep enough to sustain all 30 participants and you have no surprises, should you do that? Or do you kick some people out of their limelight so Drew Carey can come in? You know, like it's like that type of thing where it's like Logan Paul. I guess Logan Paul was a surprise.
Yeah.
So like Logan's return and Booker's return were like the big surprises that I recall of the night.
Yeah.
But like that's kind of it. Michelle McCool gets the award for the most Royal Rumble like entrance of the night, where I love entrances like that, where there's like that one year that JBL did it, I think.
Oh god, all the announcers, yeah, Cole and
where the music hits and then the camera's like,
wait a minute,
there, they're like, it's my time, and they like take out their stuff. Those are the moments that make Royal Rumbles for me. But I totally get the side of like, well, we have the talent, you know. If we had, I don't know, the Boogeyman come in again, you know, that is now taking whatever Ricochet's spot or somebody else like that. And so one thing to note, which has nothing to do with surprises, I didn't know that Kofi's spot was messed up until later. Like at least in the arena and at least where we were sitting, nobody caught that. It looked like he just got eliminated naturally because you just see him like fall. Like I didn't see, and it was kind of a nasty spill. I saw the video of it, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm glad that he's like okay with it, because I saw when I got home, people were like, maybe it's time that Kofi retires these things, and I was like, because I thought the over the rope with the back spot, I thought that was his big thing. I was like, you know, it's not great this year, but you know, whatever. And so that was, oh my gosh, the Zelina Vega. I can't remember who she was fighting. So I feel really bad. Xylee, yeah. The spot of them on the ring apron, like I loved the inventiveness of it, where it's like, oh, they're in a 2D plane right now. Like they're doing it's so good. And she was doing the exact Street Fighter moves. I was like, I'm already in on Street Fighter 6 this year.
Nice.
But like, as soon as she started coming out, I was like, heck yeah, this is awesome. I loved it. That was probably a highlight moment. There's a lot of really cool like highlight moments. Like, you know, me, like many other people, I'm not a huge fan of Logan Paul, but by God, the man's gonna be like, I'm gonna do he's like the Shane McMahon of today, I think. Now that I'm saying that, where you're like, you don't really like him. He's not even really that great, but he's got like the moments, and he's got really good rehearsed moments. I still take it personally every time I see him do the buckshot lariat, where I'm like, look, man, that's like, I don't know, that's like doing the RKO or something. Right. Or I mean, I guess a lot of people do cutter, so I'm trying to think. But there's a very specific. It's one thing if you just, oh my God, he's doing the clothesline from hell, and it's a whole other thing when you're doing the flip into the ring, where I'm like, this is kind of an already established one. You need to pick something else.
Son of a
like,
bitch, you take that out.
Yeah, you do it. You're doing the GTS now. Yeah. Like what's happening here? It's one of those things where if Hangman were in WWE, Logan would get shut down real fast. Yeah, but because he's in AEW, Logan was probably encouraged. Like, you can make that your move, Logan. So I don't want to take away. He's got, you know, more guts than I do. Like, he can, like, more power to him that he's doing it. But he's definitely, I like that the entire internet has collectively come up with the, damn, I don't like you, but you're going to impress me. Like, and so that there were good moments. I really enjoyed a lot of the moments out of it. And like, once we got in it, it like, you know, rolled on really fast, and it like just booked through. It was pretty solid. And so that part was really good out of it. I'm trying to think of like little things around. Shout out to the people next to us who went to the seats below us that were empty because those people bought tickets and just didn't show up, I guess. Huh? And so they were like, hey, if it's cool with y'all, like, we're gonna move down there and y'all can like spread out. And I was like, heck yeah, you do that. So they did that. So that was like, it's like no matter where we go, it never fails. My brother and I are both 6'2", 6'3", like just big guys. And so like we sit down, and it never fails that one of us, my brother or I, sits down next to somebody who is also just a big framed guy. And so you're just like this. And so it's become like a tradition now where like one of us like scooches on the edge of their seat so the other one can like kind of spread out.
Sure.
And so it worked out amazingly that they were like, hey, we're just going to volunteer to go down there. And I was like, heck yeah, you do your thing, man. Yeah.
Speaking of surprise entrance, Papa Griff asked in chat, how did you feel, or how was the live reaction for Miss number 30 in Nia Jax?
Oh my God. Okay, so I genuinely feel bad for her to that pop, because it was a two-tone thing that I don't know how, you know, it's weird where I don't know if everybody, but the people behind us definitely had like go away heat. They didn't have, oh, she's a heel coming back. Oh no. Like they made jokes all night of, oh my God, she's going to come back and injure everybody. And I'm like, oh, let's not being mean to Nia or whatever. And then she actually did come back, and she gets a chorus of boos. And I'm like, oh God. And like, and so I'm now sympathizing with her. Oh my God, I forgot about the botch of how okay.
Oh, the countdown.
The countdown. I told my brother, I want them to do this in every Rumble from now on, because it was so much better. My brother and I came up with a solution. Colby was smart and was like, just do it for number 30, because then it's a surprise attack pretty much. Whereas I was like, you can just do it intermittent, and I'm fine with it, because we were just watching the Rumble, especially with Nia Jax's music, because it doesn't have a super long lead in or anything like that. And so we're just watching the match like, okay, cool, the count, you know, whatever. And then all of a sudden, I'm not like those girls. And it's like, oh my God. And then the timer comes up, and we were like, what just happened? And so it was so good of how that happened. And then like, as you process it, you're like, that was a much more natural reaction that they got from me versus a super like anticipatory, like waiting, which is in and of itself a very specific thing that you'd want to do to your crowd. So like do that for 1 through 29 or whatever, but especially number 30 where it's like, well, we don't have anybody else. Like there's no surprise of, oh, the timer's going to come up or whatever. So it's like, just attack us with it, because they kayfabe the time anyway, obviously. And so it's like, just hit us with it. And it makes it so much cooler. I loved that. So yeah, her coming out, and then they kind of like, it was cool that she returned, probably. But I like that. That's a great response. It's fine that she returned. Yeah, I'll admit that. It's fine that she returned. But I also don't like that they kind of just wasted the number 30 spot, where it's a cool surprise spot. Sure. She comes in and then almost immediately gets eliminated. And I'm like, that's a number 17 thing to do. Sure. That's not like a number 30. Most of the time I could totally be wrong. But number 30 normally is somebody kind of formidable. At least in some regard. There has to be joke number 30s that I can't think off the top of my head right now.
The two I can think of are Truth and Carmella when they won the mixed tag thing.
Okay.
Those would be the only ones I can think off the top of my head.
Yeah, because normally it's like, you know, you have the obvious 27 now as like a whole thing, and then you have 30, and then you have 1, and you know, there's the numbers that you look at that normally are going to be somebody. When they come out, that you're like, okay, you have a chance at winning this. Granted, I don't think Gunther was ever going to win, but it was really cool that he lasted forever. Yeah. And is now like the longest lasting person, which I do love that they just like sweep Greatest Royal Rumble under the rug, which I still haven't ever seen that. So I didn't know that Bryan Danielson record came from there.
Yeah.
I had no clue about that. So yeah, no, but. Yeah, the Nia Jax thing was the entrance was accidentally my favorite entrance music happening of the night. But yeah, the way that they used number 30 was less than enviable, I would say.
So we talked about the Rumbles. How did you feel the payoffs were for the other matches? So Bray's, the women's championship, and the men's. I think we've kind of alluded to Sammy's, we talked about the pop and stuff like that. How did you feel the other two matches played out? You talked about time, but in terms of like a payoff or a story.
So I would say, I kind of alluded to him earlier. I think the crowd, at least from what I gauged, was kind of underwhelmed by both of them because, like I said, we had a running theory that the men's Rumble ran long because the pitch black match happens. And it's the definition of a WWE thing to do, where we're like, ooh, pretty lights. And we're like just amazed at the technology happening. And before you know it, like the thing's over and you're like, that match kind of sucked. Like they hit each other with a kendo stick that we from our seats really couldn't see. You just see like a glow stick like hitting, but like you don't really see anything. And then like they obviously did their big production thing, but again in the crowd it's kind of like now I'm watching theater even more like regular wrestling, because now we're literally, it's like standing on a stage, and as soon as, it's funny how they hide things in plain sight that you just see all night. Well, not all night, but you see for like an hour and a half, and you just don't even think about it. Oh my God, there's like a undescribed black plane over there that I've never seen before at a wrestling show, but I guess it's there. And it's like they go to it. Oh, obviously that's a setup for somebody to do something. And so they go to it. We're like, oh, this is cool. And then you get I don't know how to describe it, but just the caveman human nature of like somebody jumping from a high height, and you're like, oh, and like that's just how it's like monster trucks. I'm like, I'm gonna scream for it or whatever. And then so like that was interesting, and then the lights went out, and then the women's match was even more underwhelming because like, you know, Bianca Belair is awesome, and Alexa Bliss is also awesome. I don't know if I've seen as many matches from her that like I've seen from like Bianca, where I'm like, I know Bianca can pull out some bangers. But I bet Alexa Bliss is also really good in that moment and everything. But like, they just get to the match, and you're like, okay, my brother hasn't seen a WWE product, like a television product, in a long time. He's like keeping up with things through like Going in Raw, Steven Larson, and like stuff like that. Sure. But he doesn't just like watch the regular product. And I've been watching Raw and SmackDown leading up probably for a few weeks. Okay. So I kind of knew the storylines, but him and I are the definition now of like, okay, you're not really going to get us to tune in unless you guys do something really good in the lead up to it. And then you're like, well, I have to tune in now. And so neither of us really knew what was going on leading up to it. And then you get to the end, and then Alexa Bliss is like kneeling in the center of the ring. And that doesn't even really have payoff. It's like leading to the next thing. It's like, oh, the story continues. And you're like, okay, I feel like at this point we need to pull the trigger on Alexa Bliss is obviously connected in some way to Bray Wyatt or, you know, to that whole family or whatever. I do like the idea of them doing that on separate brands now that I'm talking about it, where it's like, that's kind of interesting where the you know, the legacy, if you will, of that character and everything is separating on both. It's not Alexa being Sister Abigail anymore right next to Bray. Now it's like Alexa's doing her thing. And I mean, my God, they still sell that Lily doll.
Yeah.
And I was amazed. Like, I'm not a child. I don't claim to be a child. But like, I don't know how anybody can look at that Lily doll and be like, I want that. And then the guy's like $25.
Right.
And they're like, yes. And it's like, people are walking around, like kids are walking around with it. And like, I bought it, so of course I understand. But I understand when you buy like the event specific, you know, stuffed animals and stuff like that. But like the Lily doll, she's not even in an active like storyline anymore. She was torn up like 6 months ago now, I think.
Right, something like that.
Whatever. Yeah. So I'm still amazed. Then that's probably why they're going back to it. But talking about merch, I was telling my brother, I was like, again, on the ballsiness of them to split up Jay and Jimmy, presumably. At this moment where we're still like you're walking around that crowd, and again talking about the one thing, like there are so many Usos shirts in the crowd, and like there's Sammy shirts, there's Roman shirts, but like the Usos remind me so much of like Rey Mysterio in a weird way, where like the kids, I sound like an old man, the kids love the Usos. Like so many kids are walking around in Uso shirt. The kid in front of me was like standing up and doing the one, and it's like a child, and you're like, this is adorable. But like I've definitely noticed that the younger demographics love the Usos, and it's so funny. But it's like, man, you guys are potentially costing the We the One shirt, and I'm like, I know those are selling hand over fist.
Yeah.
So that's, you know, kudos to them for taking the leap. I doubt that they actually split up the tag team, but maybe for another storyline or something like we had, but
we'll see. I think they're
knows?
following that next week. But yeah, agreeing with the merch, because Sammy's just got like tape with Zayn on.
My brother almost bought that shirt. He was like, I want this shirt like because I like the shirt. He goes, but I'm not gonna get this shirt because nobody's really actually gonna understand the shirt. It's just gonna be like, oh, it just says Sammy, but like Zayn.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I have to agree with the storyline stuff. Like the Bray Wyatt stuff is interesting, and like especially when he first returned, like it was like, oh, this is really cool, and then obviously the live action puppets and whatnot. But both of them, it just felt like, yeah, what was the finish point? I get like you want the story to continue, but it feels like there wasn't enough to like lure me in or keep me on the hook, kind of thing. Like the women's match felt like that could have been weekly TV. Like that just didn't feel any different. So it was like, yeah, it's getting to that point. We need to do something. You're losing me here.
It was super. Yeah, I don't know. It was. I totally agree with both of them. Where it's like, I didn't watch SmackDown last night, so I don't know if they followed up on Bray. But it's just like I agree. Where it's like I like the long form storytelling, but normally especially the big four like serve as like major pit stops for these stories and major development points for these stories. See Sami Zayn and Roman Reigns. Where for the Bray story and the Alexa story, both specifically, it was like, it's like you said, it's another weekly TV point. Like we're progressing the story. We'll get there by Mania probably, but like it's gonna take a minute.
Yeah, I guess we'll see. Well, nice. Well, that's gonna wrap up topic 1 of the Rumble. Glad you had a good time, and yeah, we'll have to see when they come back, I guess, for your next big event. But we're going to stay on the topic of wrestling, everybody, and we're going to go a little bit deeper into Corey's history with wrestling. So, Corey, you alluded to it with like 2014 NXT kind of getting you back into the fold, or I'm assuming back into the fold. When did you start becoming a wrestling fan?
So it's very funny. I don't know that most people would know the like exact day that they got into wrestling. And I guess I actually probably will know the exact day that I got into wrestling. Actually, I take it back. I can't remember the other guy's name. So leading into, it was definitely 2006. It was at the beginning of 06. Very specifically, if you remember the storyline of Kane leading up to See No Evil, where he did the May 19th stuff. And it was like this whole thing. If you don't remember, if anybody watching doesn't remember, Kane would, in storylines or whatever, they alluded to maybe that was the day that Undertaker burned down their house. Like it was like this weird thing. He would be in the middle of a match, the lights would flicker, and on the PA you would just hear people whispering like May 19th, or what is this whole thing. At the same time, concurrently, the Mr. McMahon, Shawn Michaels feud is happening, and it is in the throes of this feud leading up to WrestleMania 22. And so Vince McMahon put the match, hey, this is going to be Kane versus, I can't remember his name for the life of me. It's one of those things that I've known this trivia forever in my life. He was one half of that of the Canadian tag team. That was their whole gimmick, is we're a Canadian tag team. And Shawn Michaels was the special guest referee. And I can't remember exactly the circumstances of how my brother called me into the room, or if I just walked in there and he was like, hey, or if I walked in there and I was like, oh, what is this? But I definitely went in there and saw Rob Conway. Maybe?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I think it was Rob Conway.
Conway, was it Dupree with him, or was it somebody else?
Yeah, versus Rob Conway. Heck yes, Shawn Michaels. There we go. I want to see the exact day that this came out. May 1st, 2006 was the exact day that I got into wrestling. And so I don't know why. Okay, so 2006, I would have been 10 exactly. Okay. So it was just my exact type of humor for some reason, where Shawn Michaels he had to wear a shirt that said May 19th on it. And so that was like the whole thing. Oh, well, Kane's going to ignore Rob Conway. Kane's going to attack Shawn Michaels. Oh, I'm Vince McMahon. I'm evil. And I like to touch people. And so,
topical.
And so Shawn Michaels immediately super kicks Rob Conway and puts the May 19th shirt on Rob Conway. And so Kane comes out and is like, what the fuck, man? Like, why are you wearing that shirt? And he starts beating him up. And Shawn Michaels starts doing the thing as the referee. He like grabs a trash can. He's on the apron. He's like holding the trash can. And Kane grabs the trash can and hits. And Shawn Michaels like, where'd the trash can go? And he's doing very basic mime humor. And it's just cracking me up at 10 years old. I'm like, I like the cut of this guy's jib. And so I'm like, I'm in now. And I can't remember what like kept going. I remember very vividly, this is also the lead up to DX's reunion. I remember very vividly, I can never find this match, but there was a tornado like tag team match or something like that. Maybe it was a fatal 4-way of Triple H and Rob Van Dam and Edge and John Cena on a Raw. And I can't remember exactly how it happened, but like there was a very specific moment where Triple H and Shawn Michaels meet on the stage. And they like share a glance and everybody's like, whoa. And so that was like a whole thing. And then, after WrestleMania, Vince starts turning on Triple H and then all that happens. And then DX is there, which is great for a 10-year-old. Like that's everything a 10-year-old could want is the DX revival. I wasn't there for original DX, but I was the exact demographic for DX's revival at the moment. And so I had the DX shirts. We were crotch chopping on the playground. It was great. It was a fantastic time. And so from there on, like I was in. I remember, I don't know if you know the video channel.
Nope, cut out. Hold on. Huh, you muted on me. There we go. Now you're back.
All right, I'm back.
Yeah, I can hear you. Oh, maybe not.
Oh, no. If I hit my mic thing, it like completely changes it.
Okay, now again.
It's a big integral weakness in my setup. And so anyway, Hastings had WrestleMania 22 out, and I remember it like the back of my hand, where we brought it up to the cash register, and the guy was like, "We can't sell you this." Oh. And my dad was like, "Well, it's out there." And the guy's like, "Sorry, it's this is breaking street date. Like, it shouldn't have been out there." And my dad was like, "You're gonna sell us that DVD?" And he's like, "I literally can't." And he's like, "The system won't let us." And so like we ended up getting WrestleMania 22 later at Walmart. And so it was just this whole thing. We had a whole get together for WrestleMania 23 at our house, and it was just this whole thing. So since 2006, I was like super into it. And at the same time, we got into TNA. I don't remember how we got into TNA, but somehow we got into TNA. And so we more transitioned into a TNA household from a WWE household. And so especially with the advent, well, really around 2008, both of the companies kind of started losing ground in my household. Okay. Where by 2009, WWE was just not even spoken of. And probably the same of TNA, honestly. By 2009, 2010, TNA was kind of in a weird place. And so we had kind of dropped out definitely by 09 and 10. And then the pipe bomb happens in 2011. And I'm back in for maybe like a month or something, like not long at all. But the pipe bomb, like it did many people, me and my brother were like, we gotta tune back in, see what happens. And then looking back, it felt like so long that Punk was doing the cool thing of like always going to Comic-Con and he's like harassing Triple H at Comic-Con, where he's got the belt in the fridge after Money in the Bank. He's like, "I don't work here anymore." And they're like, for some reason, looking back, my brother and I thought that it was like a 3-month program where there wasn't a WWE champion and they're like working on it or whatever, but like CM Punk's parading around. And then looking back, like it's legitimately a 1-month thing. Yeah. Like 3 weeks. It's so fast. And we dropped back off again. And at some point in there, my brother picked back up on like overseas things. And I picked up on WWE around 2004, late 13, early 14, because I caught the beginning. I caught like the very beginning of the Yes movement. Right after, because there was like all the, there was like the Wyatt family stuff, and there was, I remember very vividly the night where they were doing the Randy Orton, I think it was Orton had just won both the titles, and the crowd was like hijacking Raw, and they had to acknowledge Daniel Bryan in front, and it was like totally unscripted before like the weird, hey, take over Raw thing. Yeah. But like, that brought me back in, and I've pretty much been back in since, because then you had like the NXT stuff that you could really fall back on, and NXT was doing wonderful things around 2014, and that's when NXT really started kicking up, and yeah, so it's been kind of a bumpy ride over the years, and then especially with AEW's advent, I have found a totally new thing. Like I alluded to it earlier, but my brother and I really don't watch weekly WWE anymore. I keep up with the Big Four for sure, and I watch pretty much daily. There's 2 things that I watch on a daily basis, which is video game news and wrestling news. So even though I don't watch the product, I absorb it through like Going in Raw. I really like Wrestle Talk, and those are my big 2, is Going in Raw and Wrestle Talk. I'll watch both of those. Wrestle Talk's definitely more digestible, and you can watch a 10-minute video or whatever and kind of catch up on everything. But yeah, I still love the business and everything. And my brother took a different route where he, is training to and is kind of actively becoming a pro wrestler. Awesome. He was chosen in Dustin Rhodes' second class. So he was taught by Dustin. And that was like a really cool thing to be. I obviously wasn't there, but I got to hear about it and everything and support him through that. And then now he, did you watch any TNA? Yeah. Throughout the years? Mm-hmm. So Homicide and Hernandez, obviously LAX, Hernandez also has a school up in San Antonio. So my brother went from being taught by Dustin Rhodes to now he's being taught by Hernandez after he did that. So it's like we always joke about that, like he's going through these people that we've watched like for forever. And so yeah, he's, you know, going through his journey and everything, and then I'm just watching from afar and everything. And especially like I'm such a fan of the AEW style of things. Like I said way at the beginning of the episode, like I talk about it on Twitter all the time, but like if you go to an AEW live show, it's like a party. It's great. I think I've been to like 7 or 8. I was trying to count earlier today. I've been to like 7 or 8 of them now. And every time, like, they always talk about how much they like the Texas crowds and stuff. And so I don't know if that's just a Texas thing, but I sincerely doubt it, is that you go and it's like people are yelling their heads off. People are like, they yell back and forth like in between matches and stuff. Justin Roberts will like, it's like a comedy show, and like what I've always heard late night shows are like, where Justin Roberts like warms up the crowd and like introduces you to the ring crew, and it's like a whole thing. It's a much, you know, like Tony Khan comes out before, I think every episode he's come out before for us, so I think that's just something he does every week. Comes out and like prepares you for like Dynamite and everything, and every time I make the joke, he comes out and I'll yell at my brother, I'm like, that guy's worth all of us combined. And so like I just really like the AEW crowd, but it's just a different like feeling. That being said, me and my brother were shocked in a good way by the FU Roman chants, where like I don't want to brag, I didn't start it by any means necessary, but it was our section that started it.
Nice. And
I like it first because eventually like everybody got it, but I like it first. Like the people on the ground, on the floor seats, you could see them like turning up, like kind of in disgust. They were like, are they saying the F word? And it's like, it was so funny to be there for that. We just started cracking up. And then have you seen the video since of somebody ringside where it's the view of Pat McAfee, Corey Graves, and Michael Cole reacting to the FU? It's so good. Pat McAfee like can't believe it. He's like looking around, and Corey Graves and Michael Cole just share like this like little smirk across from each other. They're like, oh yeah, it's working. He's got the heat now. So it's great. Like it was phenomenal. But yeah, wrestling has almost equal. Now video games are definitely a bigger part of my life for obvious reasons, but almost to an equal part has like always been throughout my life. There's almost always, like I said, since 10 years old, like there's always been wrestling somewhere around or whatever. I mean, there's a Shawn Michaels figure over there. I still haven't met Shawn. I've got his signature in, you know, like books and stuff like that, but like I tweeted about it. I wanted to try to meet him at the Rumble, but he had no like meet and greets or anything, which the man lives in San Antonio. You'd think he'd like, they would set something up, but like, I still want to meet him, but he's like probably the main one that I've just never like met and stuff. And luckily we saw him at like house shows perform and stuff, but I don't think I've seen in my adult life him perform, because he did his retirement match like, I don't know when, but it was at the Manias where I wasn't watching. Yeah. Like I had to go back and watch both the Taker 1 and 2 match.
Yeah. Sorry. Ric Flair was 24. He was like 26.
Yeah. He was 26. Yeah.
Sorry.
Because he put his career on the line. No, yeah. You're good. Because yeah, we watched 24, and then I'm glad that you said that. That's a really good way to put a nail in that. We watched 24, and by 25 we were done in the household with WWE. We were like a TNA household. So I don't know what year that was, but that's a really good way to put it. Because I had to watch later and be like, oh my god, this Taker and Michaels match is phenomenal. Michaels is still my favorite. Just mainly, it's a lot like how we talk about Final Fantasy in my household, where I go, whatever your first Final Fantasy was almost always your favorite Final Fantasy. It's almost always that way. There are, of course, the exceptions, but you hear people like, oh, I played Final Fantasy VII when I was 10, and I've been in love ever since. And, like, that's how it goes. And that's how it is for me and Shawn Michaels. That was, like, the first one I saw. He's got a great moveset. He's phenomenal. And so, yeah, like him and, I don't know. I could go on about a lot of my favorite Shawn Michaels matches, too. So.
Right. Well, nice. Yeah, I kind of agree with what you're talking about. I'm going to kind of hit on a few points here. The live events. I was very fortunate here where I live, we had like a 3-month span where AEW came 1 month, Impact had Bound for Glory, and then Raw came, and I was able to go to all three. Totally agree on the atmosphere. Like AEW, like you said, everybody's hooping and hollering, and they're doing stuff in the intermission, and I was like, wow, okay. Impact, I was very fortunate to be very close to ringside. I wasn't front row, but I was second row, and those tickets were mad cheap. I was like, oh fuck, okay. But like that was amazing, and like the energy in that room was insane. And then on Raw, like I got closer than I did with AEW, and I still had a blast with it. But yeah, it was a totally different atmosphere. Like we cheered for certain things, and then like the ground floor, they had people like in between when they're actually wrestling, like, okay, let's sit down now. Like everybody was good. Like I get it. I was like, oh well. That's a little unfortunate, but
it's much more sanctioned.
Exactly.
Events, for sure.
But yeah, they each have their own atmosphere to it. It's a lot of fun, and exciting to see what each product brings to the table for the what they put up. So you mentioned Shawn Michaels. I agree wholeheartedly. I think he's my top favorite too, and along the same lines of like the first thing you see. My history with wrestling is kind of shares parallels with yours, but has a little bit different of starting point. So I don't remember exactly when, but at some time when I was a child, my parents must have had a VHS of wrestling. But the thing that I remember the most, and the first thing I recall of wrestling, is the barbershop. And Michael's throwing Jannetty through. That stuck with me. Of like, that's awesome. Okay. So he was the guy to keep an eye on. And I had known about it, growing up. Had some figures, and the Macho Man like beat him up buddy, wrestle buddy, so he was around. But then I kind of fell off. And then a little bit after when you popped in, it was just before WrestleMania 23. I think it was that SummerSlam prior. We were at my uncle's house. He had it on, and I was just in from that moment. Like caught on to Impact. WrestleMania 23 was my first Mania watching. Like that night, only watched half of it because it was a school night, and then watched the rest because we taped it. And then it's been kind of a ride from there. And yeah, it's been great. And there's been moments of like, the resurgence and the falling off. Like you said, you don't watch week to week. I'm kind of the same way. I'll watch all the pay-per-views. And then the rest is, Twitter, checking the feeds. Yes. And then, like, What Culture is big for me because I just enjoy, Simon Miller and those guys, their comedy. So catching up that way. And then, like you said, with NXT, with, like, Neville and Zayn and Sasha and Bayley, like, those guys going to NXT, TakeOver Brooklyn, the first one, like, just that moment. Yeah, that was huge. That was a similar thing where we were up there, binoculars, like, there they are.
Dang, yeah, those Brooklyn ones, like all like I think up to like Brooklyn 3, I would say. I don't know about past that, but like those are all like seminal NXT moments. So that's awesome.
Yeah, so going to that first one and seeing Sasha and Bayley totally steal the show there, that was great, and just like being fully engulfed in it since that point has been a lot of fun. And obviously, with the addition of Impact's growth, rise, fall, regrowth, emergence kind of thing. And then, AEW coming on the scene. It's been a fun ride. So with Shawn Michaels being your guy, your number one, who are some other favorites that you do have? And feel free to break this up to like past superstars. And who do you like now? Across, of course, any brand.
Let's see. I mean, so luckily, I think all of my like favorites I would still say are still around. I don't want to brag here. I don't want to sound like a hipster.
Okay.
But I do want to say that from like step one, I really dug the Acclaimed, and I was like telling my brother, I was like, oh yeah, I like these guys, and like then the whole thing happened with Max Caster and like the controversial rap or whatever, and then he was like doing the weird thing that people didn't know if it was a work or not, where he's like putting his tights on Craigslist. He's like putting his tights on Craigslist, and he's like, don't need these anymore or whatever. But he's like selling it really perfectly. And I was like, man, these guys are great. And then they came back, and it's just been like hit after hit after hit with Acclaimed. I really dig them. I hate to sound like like a normie here, but Kenny Omega is awesome. I'm a really big fan of the stuff that I've seen of Kenny since then. This is one of those things that I should know a lot more off the top of my head of ones that I enjoy. I'm trying to think of like WWE specific ones.
Sure.
I mean, Cody's like a cheat. So I don't want to say Cody because that's like everybody's on the Cody train right now. But I did see like I think everybody felt this way, and I kind of think, no offense to the Tulsa crowd, I kind of think it was just Tulsa was kind of dead all night. Because like Cody came out and I saw so many people like, oh, the crowd's already turning on Cody. And it's like, I think the crowd just kind of sucks tonight. Like, cause that was like all night. They didn't really see him until like the end. Oh, well, that's a great example. I mean, AJ Styles is phenomenal. No pun intended. Has like always been. I really dug him in TNA and everything. Oh man, I've always really liked Sting. It's very funny because Sting is such a funny example of like, I've never really cared for his matches that much, but he's like a great example of just a character that captures you or whatever. Because I'm just like, I remember in the TNA days, I just loved Sting. And a really big thing in TNA in 2006 and 2007 was Jeff Jarrett and Sting. Mm-hmm. And I will never forget, it was one of the first things that we saw at TNA was Jeff Jarrett running out and spraying gasoline in Sting's eyes. And that was like a whole thing. And Sting was like blinded forever. It was like a whole thing. So yeah, Sting I really liked. Edge is a huge one for me. I've been a big Edge fan. I've been a Matt Hardy fan for forever, speaking of Edge. So that's like I think that covers kind of most of them. I have definitely a like style, I would say. I mean, sure. Jericho is another huge one now. It's funny how Jericho, I don't know if I'd be curious to hear your opinion on Jericho, because I feel like over the years and even in very fast succession, Jericho has gone from, wow, this guy's incredible. And then he goes to New Japan. People are like, wow, this guy is incredible. And he like does the AEW stuff, people are like, wow, this guy's amazing or whatever. And then it seems like he dipped or whatever. And then like, especially recently, before all the Punk stuff, I felt like his stock online was like dipping lower and lower with like the Inner Circle. And it was like, it's like, okay, Jericho, we get it. You're in like every third segment every week on AEW. Like, we get it. And then like the Punk stuff happened, and it was like he's one of the ones that like really stepped up, it sounds like, and was like, no, like we're gonna, like this could be taken away at any time. Like we need to treat this with respect and everything. And now it feels like his stock is high again online. At least through my eyes. I don't know why, but he cracks me up with like the wizard gimmick. Cracked me up. I mean, he only had it for a couple of weeks, and then it's back every time he does the fireball. But he is so good at reinvention and everything, and like I really dug. I mean, he's like intrinsically linked in his WWE career with Michaels. He's had a few really great Shawn Michaels feuds, and then he went overseas and was popping off over there. I used to have. Growing up, one year for my birthday, my brother got me it's a great gift. There's no way he could have known this. A very poorly burned best of Chris Jericho in Mexico and Japan, like really early career Jericho, that when you watch it, you can very easily tell it was one of those VHS DVD combos that they were burning from a VHS to a DVD. And like the VHS is like really bad quality. You'll get like skips, and you'll get it sounds like a VHS. It sounds like you're going and like the commentators are like Chris Jericho, and it's like I can only hear like one every 3 words, but it's one of those that I still have it back there just because it's a hilarious thing to go back and watch. So yeah, I would say right behind Michaels is funny enough is Jericho, but everybody else I listed is somewhere intermingling in there.
Mm-hmm. All right. So you kind of alluded to it. Jericho and Michaels shared some good rivalries together, some good bouts. What are some of your favorite matches that you've watched across, in general? Yeah.
Just anybody?
Anybody, yeah.
So we said it earlier. Taker, Michaels. I like 25 better than 26. A lot of people say 26 is better, but I definitely like 25 better. Man, there's definitely some obvious ones. I'm gonna sound like a normie here, but CM Punk and Cena at Money in the Bank is like one of those that you can show somebody, at least in my opinion, because I'm a really big fan. Part of wrestling for me, and probably for a lot of people, I bet, is the atmosphere of it. Like, sure, the storytelling's great, the athletic acumen, if I'm using that word correctly, is great. And if you ask my brother, I bet that the performing art of it, the performing art of it, and he does not look happy. And like the athleticism and everything is like most of it. For me, a lot of it is crowd energy and stuff like that. And so like the show of it. Growing up, I loved. Now at my age, I know why I liked it, and it's very funny. But like growing up, I loved the video packages.
Yep.
Now I know, and that's what I do for a career now. I know that probably had a pretty good hand in leading to where I am today, as far as my editing sensibilities and what I think is cool in an edit and stuff. And so like the crowd energy in Punk and Cena in 2011 is like unmatched. It's right up there with One Night Stand 2006. It's right up there with Rock and Hogan and 17. And so like a lot of my favorite ones are funny enough, not even like the quality of the wrestling, but like the quality of the crowd and the moment that surrounded it, which is kind of a weird take. But like, I mean, I'm trying to think of one like for the wrestling of it. Mania 19 of Michaels and Jericho is a solid match, is a really good match. And I really enjoyed that. This is one of those questions that looking back, I'm going to be like, oh my God, there's so many that I could choose.
Sure.
That I should have chosen. One that really sticks out, again, this is kind of a normie answer, but nowadays it's becoming less of a normie answer. I would say Daniel Styles and Joe from TNA, the Triple Threat, is phenomenal, is awesome. It's a really good, it's a solid triple threat one, but like it showcases the Fosbury flop very well. So I'm a big fan of that. There's a lot of TNA matches that looking back, I'll probably be like, oh, I loved that. I was a big fan of Jeff Hardy in TNA. It's really funny because when you get into wrestling, obviously you're watching what you're watching now, but then you'll go back and watch, and it's never been easier than now. But back then it was like, hey, give me this WrestleMania anthology for my Christmas or whatever. And they would give me like this one, which had, I think it was WrestleMania 15 through 20. I'm almost positive that was the 5. Or no, through 21 for sure, because 21 was in there. But anyway, WrestleMania 17 got watched so much. And so I knew a lot of Jeff Hardy from there, but I got introduced to Jeff Hardy through TNA. And so it was really funny. A lot of my early Jeff Hardy memories, I had a TNA Jeff Hardy action figure before I had a WWE Jeff Hardy action figure, which is really funny to look back on. And like a lot of his TNA career, I actually can't think of one specific match, but I do remember really enjoying a lot of his matches. And, you know, I said it earlier with AEW, but shout out to the TNA tunnels. Just iconic, amazing. Yep. Because Jeff Hardy very much specifically used the tunnels coming out. Like that was one of the very specific ones where they would go like in the tunnel and he would like come out.
The little lights around too. Yep.
Yeah, it was amazing. So yeah, I feel like I'm disappointing on this question specifically because now that I feel like I'm a bad wrestling fan. I gotta nail down some top matches.
I mean, there's a lot out there. I don't blame you.
There is, yeah. There's a lot. I've only got like one thing over there anymore. I used to have this huge collection of wrestling DVDs growing up, and then I sold most of them off, and my brother was very unhappy with me that day. I don't think I sold them for a very good price either, if I recall correctly. I think that was a lot of the reason he was mad. He was like, I can't believe you sold those.
No, I mean, I think you nailed it on the head. Like, matches that connect can be those ones with the audience reaction. And that's, you know, they built to that moment. Something in the story compelled people to be intrinsically tied to, you know, what was happening. And we're seeing it now, obviously, with, you know, Sami and Roman, this whole build of like a character to get behind, new character to get, or a new person, like respecting them in a different way, because we've seen, you know, Roman try to be pushed in this light before, but not on the heel side, but now he has, like, people like him. And Obviously, with the Usos and Solo Sikoa coming up through NXT and making an impact automatically up on the main roster. Like, these are characters you get behind, and that groundswell, that audience reaction, yeah, it adds that whole nother layer to the match. So I think that's great that you pointed that out. Because, yeah, well, not everybody, but a lot of people can just go out there and do this, do that, do the thing, you know, whoop. But that's something that is another layer to it that makes it special, that not everybody can do or don't give the time to make it this kind of moment, or, you know, get people to react emotionally, I guess, to the thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Was it the North American title that Solo Sikoa held for a day?
Yeah, and then he relinquished it, or did the
they did it for the press conference.
Yep. And then Carmelo got it back. Yeah.
Every time, like, I'm sure Sikoa is a great wrestler. Every time he gets brought up, my brother and I were like, "Yeah, he held that title for a day."
Yeah.
They did it just for the photo op, so everybody in the bloodline would have something. And then they kicked him out.
Yep.
Kicked him out of the title.
There goes your planning for you. We need this guy. Son of what? But
that was so crazy in one of the calls that just happened, where Shawn Michaels just straight up said, he was like, "Yeah, I don't hear from Hunter that much, but when they need something, he'll call." And I'm like, "Wow, you guys don't talk?" Like, it seems like they would be like especially with Triple H's, you know, connection to NXT, you'd think he would be like, "Hey, are you doing stuff good down there? What's happening?"
Yeah,
I guess he's a busy man now.
I don't know. I thought well, maybe this is just, you know, the internet talking, because wrestling journalists totally do that. Like, I thought it sounded like they were gonna let people know ahead of time, like, okay, we're not gonna bring you up to the main roster until we have a plan. So, like, maybe that was kind of, I know this is alluded to the last topic with the Rumble, but maybe that was why there wasn't a lot of NXT representation, like a Braun Breaker. Like, maybe that's why only Roxanne, Indy, and Zoe got there. Maybe we have a plan for them to kind of go up to the main roster, and this is just a little bit like, hey, here's this person, so you know, in 3 months' time, like, oh, it's that person.
Yeah, that's a good call. That's a good point. That's something we noticed while we were sitting in the crowd, where we were like, wow, the women's Rumble has a lot of NXT people in there. Like, it's so crazy, because the 2017 one is the really famous Ty Dillinger 10 moment. The first time he came out to 10. And so, like, that was a huge moment. I loved Ty Dillinger. I feel bad that Sean Spears hasn't been on TV. He's another one that, if you would have asked me, you know, 2 years ago, I probably would have mentioned Sean Spears on my list. But I don't know if he's still contracted at AEW or what's going on there, but the man has not appeared on my television.
As far as I know, I think he still is. I know he just recently had his child with Peyton.
Oh, yeah.
Or Cassie.
Yes.
But yeah, other than that, I don't know what's going on with that. So,
yeah.
I mean, he's doing flatbacks with Breeze, so hopefully they're happy with that. Yeah.
That's true.
Nice. Very nice. Well, that's going to wrap up topic 2. So let's move on to topic 3. Corey, what is your topic today?
All right. So I have a couple that I was bouncing between, but I'm going to say something very specific, and I'll give you my answer to kind of give you time to come up with yours.
Okay.
Which is, what is a personally underrated franchise for you? Now, the weird part of this question is not what's an underrated franchise, because my answer is The Legend of Zelda, which is by all means not underrated at all. But for me personally, for years I have underrated it in the Corey pantheon, where the example is, I've played Pokemon my entire life from childhood. And then the more you think about it, you're like, well, the GameCube was my first, like, this is your console, Corey. This isn't Colby's. This isn't half Colby's, whatever. We shared the PS2. Colby got the Xbox, and I got the GameCube. And they were like, this is your console. So I played Wind Waker. Dumb child Corey probably never beat Wind Waker, but I played the hell out of Wind Waker. I got a Wii, and of course I got Twilight Princess, because I got a Wii when it first came out, and it felt like everybody got Twilight Princess when it first came out. I got a Wii U so I could play Wind Waker HD on it. And then the Switch I got the day that it released, of course, with Breath of the Wild. And then I went back and played Ocarina of Time on the DS, and I was like, "Wait, I love this." And then the more I thought about it, I was like, "Wait a second, The Legend of Zelda is an integral franchise to my entire life, and I've never given it the due respect that it has in my life. And so I've gone back, and I don't like Majora's Mask. I still haven't beat Majora's Mask. I know Majora's Mask has the fan base out there, but Link Between Worlds is like my favorite, which is a weird take. I couldn't get through the Sky. Oh, sorry, I forgot to mention. I of course bought Skyward Sword because everybody bought Skyward Sword, and 10 out of 10, which is my favorite example in my entire gaming career of how weird an entire industry has course corrected. Where the game launches and everybody was like, "This game is perfect, 10 out of 10, amazing," and then within like a year, people turned on it, and then nowadays people are like, yeah, it's not bad, but it's like an 8. It's like a 9. But it's like even the people, like even IGN, like obviously totally different reviewer from then to now, but like everybody's like, yeah, it didn't actually deserve the 10. I don't know what we were thinking. Like it's so weird. But so it's a very weird specific question because it's not like, oh, I think, this indie game is, or this indie movie series. It could be anything, books, movies, games, whatever. It's not like I think this is underrated. It's very specifically, what have you been underrating that maybe has, played this huge part in your life like Zelda has to me? And now I'm like all in on now I feel like I'm a fanboy for Zelda. I played oh my God, I can't think of the one on Switch that
Link
everybody no, the one on Switch that the Koei Tecmo made. Hyrule
Cadence?
Warriors Age of Calamity.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Cadence of Hyrule, I actually didn't play, and this is weird because I can normally do beat-driven games. For the life of me, I can't do Cadence of Hyrule. It's so weird. I die all the time. I'm like, oh my God, I can't figure this out. But Age of Calamity got panned because of its performance issues, and people were like, oh, this game performs at 30 on a good day, but most of the time is performing at like 15, 20, which is not false. But like, I loved it. And I love the iteration of the Breath of the Wild characters. Like, I think that's a fantastic, like, portrayal. And then if you play, I just said the name, Age of Calamity. If you play Age of Calamity, it kind of, in my opinion, fixes the biggest complaint that most people have about Breath of the Wild, which is the lack of story. And Age of Calamity, while not being technically canonical, because spoiler alert, you prevent Breath of the Wild at the end, if I recall correctly, or it goes a different way. It's been a while since I've played it. Apparently, or the way I understood it, everything leading up to the inciting incident of Ganon coming out plays out the same in the timeline. I could be making that up in my head, but so at the very least, you can make your own headcanon and your own fantasy booking, tying it back to wrestling. You can fantasy book your own, like, oh, this is how Breath of the Wild happened, and hopefully in Tears of the Kingdom. Sorry, I'm rambling. But,
no, you're fine.
So Legend of Zelda is my answer. What's yours, if you have one?
So this is something I personally have maybe not recognized, I guess you're saying, right? Okay. So one popped in my head as you were explaining of like, oh, that's a really topical one. I'm trying to think of something else that maybe I have the history with. So we'll keep that over here for now.
Okay.
The one that I played and didn't connect with, but now recently have been like really immersed in and like wanting more of it, is The Last of Us. Now, I was late to The Last of Us. I got a PS3, but it was mainly like my PlayStation 2 HD collection machine.
Nice. Okay.
And so I played it on the PlayStation 4. And at that time, obviously with kind of funny circles, everybody, Last of Us, Last of Us, Last of Us. It was like God's gift, coming down. And I was like, okay. So years ago, I played it and I streamed it. And when I got to the end, I was like, yeah, that was fine. It was okay. It was good. And it could have been just, all those messages of like how amazing it was, blah, 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 and like hearing that over and over again. So when I finally got to that point, it was just like, So
yeah, it's a game.
Yeah, it does. So it was fine, but it was something I was always like, I don't get it. Like, I'm glad people like it, all that.
Yeah.
So Last of Us 2 came out, and it was one of those things where I wasn't sure if I was going to play it. But once again, happy for everybody because everybody was stoked that it was coming out. And then we get the announcement of the remake of Part 1. And I'm like, another thing. I wasn't as hard on it as some of the internet was. Of like, oh, this is blasphemous. Why are they making it? But I was like, I don't, no excitement for it. And then the show comes out, or at least they announce it. And I'm like, I'll check it out. It seems cool. And then I watched it, Corey. And just like everybody else who's watching it, Corey, I'm like, what is going on? And I don't know if it was just how my brain worked, how I pushed everything away. I don't remember jack shit about the story except for the ending. So everything's fresh. I'm watching episode to episode. I'm like, I don't know what happens. I don't know who's this character. Why are we getting this? I don't know. And it's awesome.
It's such a good way to experience it.
Yeah,
and it's amazing.
So I'm excited week to week for more episodes to come out, as most people are. And I've already made the decision that once the show is over, at least with first season, I'm gonna play the game again and try and dive back into it and play 2 for the first time. So like,
oh my God.
This is something that for years I was just like, no connection, and now all of a sudden I'm like, give me more.
It just hit.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
So I'm not sure. Yeah, it's just, I guess, the different medium and how they're telling the story, and obviously the actors and the work, the Neil behind it. Just like, woo. Just
sometimes that's what it takes. Yeah, different medium can tell you.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that you know the thing of Part 2, correct?
I have been very fortunate, and I don't know.
Heck yes.
So,
dude, I am so excited. That's amazing. It's like Final Fantasy VII levels of like, if you don't know what happens, like Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2 like is gonna hit, and it's like that same like level of stuff where it's like, if you haven't been, like, just keep your eyes shut to everything.
Okay.
I can't wait to hear your impressions on it, because I absolutely love it. I can't give it enough praise, because Last of Us Part 2, I will say this, and nobody argues with me, to be completely honest. People say it's a bold claim, but I've never heard anybody give me something else. Last of Us 2 is the best playing game I've ever played.
Okay.
Like, the way that it feels, like the gameplay, it's like something that they added that I'm sure it's not the only game. I know it's not the only game to ever do this, but they do the thing where you can dive in any direction. And so like somebody does whatever, you can dive backward. And when you dive backward, your gun's already up. So you dive backward, pow, and you never feel like such a badass until like somebody comes at you, you dive backwards and shoot them, and you're like, I am amazing. And you're like, this is so cool. That's why I can't wait for Factions to come out. That's so exciting to hear. That's amazing. I'm the opposite end of the spectrum, that I am like the people that from day one have been like, Last of Us is amazing. And then looking back, like you said with your first impressions, I love the story, but I've also been like tainted throughout years of being a huge Naughty Dog fan. Looking back, it's like, I don't know what it does. I want to play it again. I reinstalled both Remastered and Part 1, and it's very funny because I tweeted that last night, and I got 2 comments, and I got 2 people hit me up and was like, well, why are you installing Remastered? You're doing it for Factions, I guess. And I'm like, well, yes and no. Like, have you seen the comparisons with like Remastered and Part 1?
Yeah, I've seen a couple clips. Yes.
Okay. There's like, it's 2 different like ideologies, and I'm fascinated by it because Remastered follows. It's like the last. It's not like a dying breath or whatever. I don't know how you want to say it, but Remastered is like the last Naughty Dog project that like kind of has a cartoonish art style to it, because it's just remastering Last of Us 1. Starting with like Uncharted 4, and I mean, honestly, starting with like probably like Uncharted 3. I'd have to think about it, but like a lot of the characters, because they would hand animate a lot of the facial expressions. And I think they still do that to this day, by the way. They mocap, and then the animators touch up with hand animations to enunciate things and emphasize things. But like Ellie's animations in Remastered are very cartoonish in moments, and like, you know, she looks younger and Joel looks younger, and Joel's animations are more subdued because he's Joel. And like Tess, you know, Tess got the Spider-Man treatment where they made it look more like the actress who actually plays Tess. And so Tess looks a little bit different, and it's like I haven't played Remastered since like 2019 probably. I replay it on probably like a yearly cadence. So if that's true, I haven't played it since like 2021. But like I want to go back and replay it and be able to kind of feel the differences. And obviously the gameplay is relatively the same, but like it's just a different experience. And so I'm like, I've played every iteration of that game, and I've told myself I'm not going to buy it on Steam because that would be the 4th time to buy it, but I might just buy it on Steam. I don't know yet. And so, yeah, no, I'm a huge Naughty Dog stan, or mark to keep on the wrestling theme. I'm a huge Naughty Dog mark. There's a couple of PlayStation. It's very funny because most of my history, or like all of my credits, I mean, Gotham Knights like was on PlayStation, but like Halo is an Xbox title through and through. And so when I talk to people, a lot of people associate me like with Xbox stuff. And I think I take up for Xbox a lot because I love the Kind of Funny community. Don't get me wrong. Absolutely love the Kind of Funny community. But there are times where we are a little harsh on Xbox in the comments on undeserved reasons. And I will take up for things like Halo Infinite and stuff like that. And, you know, maybe, am I biased? Maybe a little, okay? But like, it's a whole thing. And so a lot of people think that I lean towards Xbox, and I'm like, joke's on you guys. In my household, I'm the PlayStation kid. I had a PlayStation 3 and my brother had the 360. I had the PS4, my brother had the Xbox One. Like all of my favorite games of all time are either Nintendo games or, well, Halo Reach is up there, but there's like Infamous and Uncharted 2 and Last of Us, and you know, I'm a Sucker Punch and a Naughty Dog fan, like through and through. Those are my like 2 dream studios that my boss knows, and we've talked about it, that I'm like, if there's a job title that fits me that opens at one of those studios, I'm going for it, man. Sorry. I'm gonna try. So yeah, no, that was my tangent on your answer, which was a phenomenal answer.
Oh, thank you.
I love it. I love it. It was great.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of something else that would resonate like that, or like similar to your Zelda one.
And it's a loaded question because by the nature of the question, you wouldn't think of it. Like, sure. This is one that I'd probably have to give you some lead time on so you can like introspectively look at yourself and be like, what have I played that I'm not giving like the respect to? And now you definitely can't see it. It's out of range. But on my shelf over there, I have a Flash and wrestling shelf that you can see next to the Stranger Things posters. And then next to that, above that, there's a My Hero Academia shelf. Below that, there's a gaming shelf. And on the gaming shelf, we have all the games I've ever worked on. But then next to that, there is Uncharted 4 and The Last of Us. And there's a Master Chief action figure. There's a Nathan Drake statue. And then right next to that now is 3 Zelda amiibos. The 2 are from Wind Waker, which I still, to this day, have never finished Wind Waker. Like I said, there's no way I finished it as a kid. I'm not counting that. And then Wind Waker HD, I keep like meaning to go back. I have a Wii U in my closet. I keep meaning to go back and play it. And then much like the wrestling leakers that we've talked about, gaming leakers sometimes just say things. And there's a very prevalent video game leak that, oh, the Zelda remasters have been done for years and Nintendo's just sitting on them. And I'm telling you right now, I don't think that's true. Like, I don't think Nintendo has had a finished game that they're just sitting on for 4 years now since I've heard that rumor pop up. And, you know, they did it with Star Fox 2, so maybe they are doing that. But they did it with Star Fox 2 because it was really bad. And we all found that out with the SNES remaster or SNES Classic. So, yeah, no, that's... I totally don't blame you for not having it, for not having an answer for that one. Because I was thinking... I try to come... I can't remember what my last topic was for you. I try to come anytime that somebody mentions these things to me. And I remember doing it for your podcast, and I can't remember what it was. But anytime somebody mentions it, I'm like, I'm gonna come in with a It can't just be an easy one. I gotta think of like a deep one, you know.
Yeah.
You gotta think about yourself, where you've been in life.
Yeah, I like it. Is there? So we went the video game route. Is there one in a different medium that you could think for yourself? Whether it's maybe film, animation, books. I know you were talking about Dune a lot last time you were on the show.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Man, Dune.
Oh, we're here.
So you talk about it with Last of Us. I'm that way with Dune now.
Okay.
Where I have completely forgotten. I don't even know if I remember the end of Dune now, because I have completely forgotten about what happens in that book. And so when part 2 comes out, it's all going to be fresh. We'll be like, hey, Zendaya, I know the big thing. Have you read the series? You probably told me this last time. No. So I'm not going to say it.
Okay.
But I mentioned to somebody I was talking to, I was like, yeah, I got to the second book. And the second book is really weird because everybody tells you the second book is weird. You open the second book and the beginning is a passage like an intro from his son that just says, hey, I'm going to warn you. Like, I'm paraphrasing, obviously.
Sure.
But it's like, hey, I'm going to warn you. This book sucks. And he's like, this book is a collection of like things that he wrote for a magazine that he was trying, if I recall this correctly, I'm sorry if I'm incorrect. He was trying out a new way to tell the story or whatever. And it's like a collection of things for the magazine. And I can't remember if that's exactly correct, but something very specifically happens. And it's a very interesting way to do the book, because the intro says, this is the book where blank happens. You're not going to like this book, but you need to get through this book to get to the third book, which is his best. And so it's like such a funny thing where you're like, no, I'm going to like this book. No matter what people say, I'm going to like this book. And there's something about, hey, I don't feel bad saying this part. They make Paul a dick. Like, he's just an absolute dick in the second book, if I recall correctly. And there's something about making him just a dick, and they beat you over the head that's what it is. It's somebody interviewing Paul.
Oh.
And it's like Paul later in his life, I think, or something, and he's just like a dick about it. And they're just like, hey, this is the story of how this happens. And they shove it down your throat. This is going to happen. And then you're thinking maybe they beat it. And then you're like, whatever. I got like halfway through it. I'm sure that it follows through because the next book is titled in a very specific way. And so I don't remember what happens in Dune at all. But like for one that's always been around, that in the same way as Zelda. See, now you flipped the question on me, and now I didn't have something prepared, and now I see how hard it is. It's a really good point, because I can take a different route, kind of, which is an author that I've been. If you see my tweets at all, the author's name is Brandon Sanderson, and I had never heard of him. No, I take that back. I have heard of him in passing every once in a while. He finished The Wheel of Time for Robert Jordan, and he, is semi-prevalent in things. And then he drops, as I mentioned earlier, I'm all about showmanship. I'm all about theatrics. And last year he dropped a thing that it was like, it's time to come clean. And he like starts the thing, and he's like, oh, I'm sorry, I need to come clean, blah, blah. And he's like, I wrote an entire book in secret during the pandemic. And then he's like, oh, this is cool, blah, blah, blah. And then he like talks about the logistics of how he had the extra time to write an entire book while he was still writing the other books that he was writing. And he was like, with all this free time, without conventions and all this stuff, like I was able to write a second book. And then he goes back to his desk, and then he goes, but I actually wrote a second book too during the pandemic. And he's right. I've written 2 entire books. And so he talks about that. And then he goes, I actually wrote 4 books during the pandemic. and he was like, I wrote 4 books during the pandemic and a graphic novel during the pandemic.
Jesus.
And so he was like, what we're going to do, he goes, people have always asked us for like swag boxes and stuff. He's like, so what we're going to do is we're going to do this Year of Sanderson, where, you can buy just the books, and you get a book every 3 months. It's like a little book club. And they're all like, he calls them short stories, because he's one of those authors that his regular, like his full-blown novels are like 1,000 pages. But his shorter books are like 400 pages, which are still sizable books.
Sure.
And so he's like, these are my regular size novels at 400 pages. So you can read them in, 3-4 months, whatever. But if you want the Year of Sanderson, you also get like a different themed box every other month of the year. And then every 3 months, every quarter, you get a book. You get a brand new book. And so I was like, heck yes, I'm totally in. So I bought a book and I read through the whole book. I ended up reading like 7 of his books last year. And he writes very fast. Like he puts out almost a book a year most of the time. And he does something that I love, where on his YouTube channel, every week he posts updates with the exact percentages of how far along he is on the next book.
Oh.
And like he's like writing it, and he's just educated guesses.
Sure.
You don't know exactly how long the book's going to be, but he's like, I'm Bing, and it'll say 5% done with this next book, and his next one's going to be another 1,000-pager, so he gets maybe 1% or 2 every week. And so it's like, okay, this is going to take a year to write, but you get to keep up with the progress through the whole way, so you're kind of invested. It's a really weird and cool way to do it. And so, like I said, I read like 7 of his books. They're all connected. He has a very Marvel, MCU, DC way to look at it, where they all in a shared universe, and then there's like Elseworld tales as well that don't take place in those universes. But you can tell because all of his magic systems follow very similar rules. It's like, oh, this isn't, of course, like a different planet in this same universe is going to take the same magic and refer to it in different ways and use it in different ways, but they don't know that the other way is even possible. They only know their thing. So like somebody will just mention like, oh, they have a really good memory. Like they can remember things for years or whatever. But in a different like book, they'll mention like, oh, if you are wearing like a band of metal, you can prescribe the memory to the band and recall it at any time. And so it's just, I'm going on another tangent, but that's a really good example of like, I've heard his name before and I'm like, oh, I'm not really a fantasy guy. I'm like a sci-fi guy. And his sci-fi book, Skyward, is what I started with. And I absolutely love, it's a trilogy. And then there's a trilogy of short stories. And then the finale is coming out this fall. And so that was the best way, you know yourself, your own tendencies, what's going to stick with you. That was the best way for me to do it because I read this sci-fi book, it hooked me, and then I found his tropes. Seems to have a negative connotation, but I'm going to say tropes. You find his tropes where there's always like the main character and then a buddy that they bounce things off of. And in the Mistborn trilogy, it's this butler named Sazed who ends up being an entire thing in and of itself, and he becomes his own character. And then in the Skyward series, it's the ship's AI named Mbot, and which the main character names it Murderbot, and it's like a whole thing. And so it's really funny, like it's great. And then in the book that I'm reading right now, the Stormlight Archive, like his main pièce de résistance or whatever, it's like him and this fairy type character, and it's a very traditional way to give exposition to the reader, because you can just, the main character is confused and can ask the companion character who is always more knowledgeable. He likes writing like sassy companion characters. The butler Sazed is real sassy. Mbot is just like the robot in Big Hero 6, who I can't think of the name right now.
Baymax.
Baymax, yeah. Mbot is just like Baymax. They have the exact same type of humor and everything. And Skyward is literally just Top Gun, but with aliens, where to the point of like the last thing is like the last act of Skyward is the last act of Top Gun, where they're at the graduating class. They have to go to the ships and like do the whole thing. And so anyway, it's phenomenal. That's a book series that I underrated personally, even though it wasn't necessarily prevalent in my life. But I'm just so glad that I have found him now, where he's kind of like in the peak of his career. I think it's the first time I've ever been able to do this, because you grow up reading books and you're like, hey, I really like this book. You're like, oh, this trilogy was written 10 years ago. You're like, oh, man, I really got into this book called Lord of the Rings. I wonder what's going to happen. And it's like, I guess Hunger Games was kind of like that, because every teenager, when I was a teenager, when that was coming out, loved Hunger Games. And so I read that, and that was, my God, if you lived in high school during the Hunger Game years, it was you'd walk in a classroom and there's like a million Suzanne Collins. Just every desk has a different one. it's a whole thing. And then now we have the Harry Potter franchise that is very similar. That was like, I can't remember when those came out. I was definitely alive when they were coming out.
Yes.
I'm old enough now. I don't think it had started coming out when I was born yet. So of course, I was just too young.
I remember getting the first one from some relatives. I don't know if it was a birthday present or whatever, but I do remember like remembering when the releases did happen, like 4 or 5 and so on. So yeah, with you being a little younger than me, that you would have been during that time period.
Talk about twists that like I'm so glad that you haven't been spoiled on some, and then like the Dune one that I'm not gonna spoil and stuff. Talk about a crazy twist that just permeates pop culture. Where like I didn't even read Harry Potter and I knew Snape kills Dumbledore. Like, that was just like a meme before memes were a thing.
Right.
Where it's like I don't even know what this means, but I'm just repeating the joke now. like I'm just a 12-year-old kid or whatever who just is being told this thing that's supposedly ruining my. And then oh my god, that's a great example. Harry Potter is kind of like the movie version of Legend of Zelda for me, because like, you know, as a parent, they like took us because they were like, oh, kids like Harry Potter, and like we saw like the 3rd Harry Potter. My brother and I hadn't known anything about it. It was very odd. Whichever Harry Potter came out the same year as, you're not gonna know this movie. There's no way, because I don't know the movie. It's a kid playing a guitar, and he's trying to find his parents, I think.
It's not Coco, right? No, that's his grandfather.
No, live action. It was during like the 4th Harry Potter movie or something.
Oh,
it was around the same time. It was a little British kid. I don't think he was British in the movie, but the actor was British. He's got a little round face, and I'm just gonna Google. We're gonna find this out together.
We got this.
Kid plays.
Isn't it great how those are the Google searches that work? You literally just type
needs parents. Oh, I guess you type in movie. This is like Guitar Center lessons. August Rush. I found it immediately.
Nope. Never would have got that.
August Rush. Do you know what Harry Potter movie came out in 2007? Let's find out.
That might have been
Order of the Phoenix.
Oh wow.
I will never forget.
The book?
Order of the Phoenix is 7? No, the film.
Oh, the film. Jeez, wow. Sorry, I'm just
good.
like, I think that's later, but no, that's the 5th book, and okay.
Woo. So I didn't know like anything. I knew Harry Potter existed, obviously by the 5th film.
Sure.
You know it exists, but like my brother and I weren't fans. Like we didn't watch it or anything, and it was my grandmother. Now it's coming together. Pampa, Texas, city of like 10,000 people. We go to the movie theater, which has 3 screens. And we sit down, and it's one of those theaters where there is no incline. Everybody's just on the same plane.
Oh, yep.
And so we're just sitting there watching it, like Harry Potter doing his thing.
And this was your first one?
All of a sudden it splices in somehow. Like, obviously, this wasn't actual film. I don't know how this happens in the digital age. It splices in with August Rush. And we're just like, well, this is weird. Like, my brother and I don't know. And my grandmother's like an 80-year-old woman. So she doesn't know. And we're just watching August Rush. And we're like, I don't think this is this. And we're like watching this kid play guitar. And we're like, should we tell somebody? And then somebody finally complained. They shut down the movie. And they're like, we can't restart it, guys. Like, you're just gonna have to go home. And so we watched like an hour of Harry Potter.
Did they give
like
you tickets to this?
August Rush. They probably gave us,
good.
Like, I was too young
like,
to know the logistics of how they figured this out. But I'm sure they gave us something.
Where'd the magic go?
And so now they're just playing guitar.
Yeah.
August Rush, I've heard, is a great movie. You can go watch August Rush. I've heard it's a good one. So yeah, Harry Potter is of a movie version of that, because I didn't know anything about it. That was my thing. And then like, I don't know, this girl that I had a crush on in like 2016 or 17 was like all about Harry Potter, and I was like, you know what, it's about time I watch these movies. I need to relate to this girl. And so I buy the Blu-ray pack of all of them, and I just like fell in love with them. I was like, these are fantastic movies. And so like that's a great example of something that was just, it's everywhere in pop culture. You're just like, I'm not watching this. In my head, growing up, it was in the same camp of Twilight. I was like,
oh, okay,
I don't need to watch this. And then you finally watch it, and you're like, wow, these are pretty good.
The
Somebody needs
Potters.
to talk about these movies.
The other side, no. Okay.
Yeah.
That was a mistake I made last year. It's like, you know what? I hear all these people talking about Twilight. Maybe I should watch Twilight. If you guys want to hear my reaction to Twilight, you can check it out in a past Wait, what are you talking about episode. I don't remember what episode it is, but go search that rant. Oh my God.
That sounds amazing. I might have to watch that. Oh my God.
Stupid.
Yeah, I've never seen them. I've seen the first one for sure. I feel like everybody's
Don't waste your time. Just watch me yell at the screen for 30 minutes, and that'll be enough.
I've seen the CGI of the baby that everybody always makes fun of.
I thought that was real. It's not real. That's a fake. The movie was actually fine.
The movie was fine.
That CG was fine. The movie as a whole, maybe not.
Oh my gosh. I know the baseball scene's like famous. Like people, they just have a baseball game in the middle of this. It's great, man. I'm excited for it. I'm gonna go watching that. So yeah, that's my those are my. You've now gotten out of me a video game, a book, and a movie, and I was only prepared with the game. So that's good hosting skills. Right
I tried. Try. Yeah, I'll have to think more about mine, and I'll have to message you. Be like, oh, so it was this one, like we talked about with the matches. We'll think of 800 things.
Yep,
once
it's gonna
we're
happen,
done.
and you're gonna be like, damn.
Yeah, but that's a good one. I like that topic. Yeah, what's affected us that maybe we didn't realize.
Yeah, right. And then you have like a whole other, because I was excited for Breath of the Wild. I was down for it. I'm really bad about impulse buying things. Like I was like, I'm not getting a Switch. I'm not doing it. But I used to work at Best Buy. By then I was making commercials. I was like, I'm just gonna go by Best Buy and just see if they have a Switch. Sure. And if you recall, the year 2017, so long ago, it was kind of hard to find a Switch at first. And I feel very lucky, but in a weird way, where I got there and I went to the manager because they didn't have any out. And I went to the manager that I knew. I was like, hey, you have any of these? And he's like, oh, let me see. And looks in the bag and he's like, we got one left. Do you want it? And I was like, yeah. So I bought it, and it's been one of those purchases that I love the Switch. I love the Switch games and everything. 90% of the year it sits in the dock,
right?
Untouched. It's a very Tears of the Kingdom is gonna get a ton of use out of it, and that's unless there's a Mario game. That's the it for me.
Yep.
That's just how it goes. I have such a loyalty. This is probably part of the problem with Pokemon. I have such a loyalty to Pokemon that I'll buy the games. I still haven't played Scarlet Violet, but I bought it over Christmas. But people like Tim Geddes have said that it'll simultaneously one of his biggest disappointments of last year and one of his favorite games of all time. So I'm like, I need to play this game. I've been kind of waiting to see if they do release a patch. So I don't think that they will, but I've gone long enough now to where I'm like, okay, by mid-February or March, I'll probably have to play it. Nothing comes out in February that I really want to play. And then I think March, Jedi just got moved.
Yes.
There's the Horizon DLC that I may buy, but other than that, I've got nothing until April. I'm a free man until April.
What are you talking about, Corey? WWE 2K23 drops on.
I've been seeing those entrance videos drop, and some of them are cool, but I'm like, I don't know what you guys are doing. I don't know if you saw the video that's been making the rounds on Twitter of Roman Reigns' spear. And his lead up is really his animation. This is cool. And then he's just doing a jog. He's just jogging.
Yeah, there is another one where he's not exhausted from the match. That looks better, but
I didn't
apparently
know
he was fatigued for more games, and
that makes more sense. I mean, I'm very excited for the AEW game just because it's something different.
Whenever it comes out.
Whenever it comes out. And also, I'm very excited for the time that we're gonna have Cody Rhodes in an AEW game and a WWE game at the same time. It's gonna be phenomenal.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
Yeah, definitely. What did I have? I had something. Oh, crap. Something popped in my head and it was automatically gone. You were talking about... Oh, Scarlet. Back to Scarlet and Violet.
Oh, yes, Pokemon.
If you want my opinion on it.
Okay.
I agree. Great game. I think the story is one of the strongest it's been in the Pokemon games. I personally didn't have issues. A couple pop-ins. Other than that, smooth sailing. So there's my 2 cents.
I'm going to say this, and I'm going to sound real bad. Like, this is one of those things, okay, that I will forever be on the, not the defensive. If you remember that Halo Infinite, infamous 2020 demo that came out on the video, and people were like, the clouds are popping in. How are they making this game? The cloud, like, this looks awful. And it's like, okay, the lighting does kind of suck. But like, yeah, the clouds popping in, really not an issue.
Yeah.
And then this is where pitchforks and torches come out. I'm not a big FromSoft guy. I buy Elden Ring, and every time you hop on the horse, it's Pop-In City.
Sure.
You're running around, and there's just popping it, and you mention it. And because I'm not a dick, I just mention it, jovially and like talking to people. And every FromSoft fan that I've ever talked to is like, oh yeah, that part sucks. And everybody's like, yeah, it's real. It's not technically good at all. And then it just gets brushed under the rug. And then Pokemon comes out, and Pop-In is the big issue. But it's in the same year as Elden Ring.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what is happening? And it's literally just like the FromSoft has such a high thing that rightfully they have earned, of such a high trust that people are like, okay, we'll totally overlook. And the Pokemon Company and Game Freak has also rightfully kind of deteriorated said trust, and they've just kind of debatably rested on their laurels over the years. And so something like Pop-In is like huge for people. That being said, your experience seems to be what most people say. Like the videos that I've seen seem to be the outliers. And the biggest thing, if I understand the situation correctly, is there seems to be a memory leak that affects the game really badly, where if you leave the game running continuously, the longer it goes, the worse the memory leak gets. And if you leave it continuously running for, say, 15 hours, then the game is like falling apart at the seams.
Sure.
But for most regular people that are going to boot it up, and I don't know how it works when it's running in the background for the Switch, but for most people who, will boot it up when they play it and then close it down when they're not playing it, or even switch out cartridges and then, whatever, most people have not had the huge issues of 5 frames a second and like giant buildings are popping in your face or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah. So
yeah,
when you got time, but then again, things just pile on.
Yeah, exactly. That was gonna be my other my other topic, which was like, what things in the backlog do you feel really guilty about that you haven't started yet?
So
that was my other one that was in the background that I didn't choose.
Let me just we'll bookmark that for the next one. That's a good one. Oh boy. Well, everybody, this has been another episode of the Wait, What Are We Talking About podcast. My name is Bret, aka Enigma911, and today we were joined once again by Corey, aka Corey Cudney. Corey, thank you so much for being on the show today, man. It was a blast.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I always really enjoy our discussions.
Yeah, definitely. And now we have a new topic for the next one, so looking forward to that.
We got a thing for the next one.
For sure. If you guys want to catch the podcast live, you'd always go to twitch.tv/Enigma911, usually every Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern. Join the chat like Papa Griff and New York to SoCal did today, and have some fun with the conversation. But if you can't catch live, that's A-OK. Go over to YouTube and podcast services the very next week, where it's broken out topic by topic and put as one big video and MP3 for your amusement on the following Friday. Last but not least, any way you could support the show, likes, shares, reviews, comments, yada, 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 yada. Whatever you can do. It may seem small, but it does help the show out in a large way. So please, if you do that, we'd love you for it. And thanks for your time. Corey, once again, thank you, sir, for joining us today. It was a blast.
Of course.
Chat, viewers, listeners, thanks for hanging out with us today. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And we will see you guys on the next one. Take care.